Thomas is a media growth strategist and founder of Videos That Convert. Helped coaches and business owners turn long-form YouTube content into scalable revenue systems. Over the past 6+ years, he's helped grow 9+ YouTube channels past 100,000 subscribers and worked behind the scenes with creators like Justin Waller and Fresh and Fit, and generated millions and millions of views across long-form and short-form content. In today's conversation, we break down what separates creators that become real businesses compared to creators that only become temporary famous online. Throughout today's conversation, we're also going to walk down the exact process, step by step, of building a modern content funnel from scratch, including what creators need to focus on early, what mistakes kill your business, and how to structure content in a way that creates long-term audience trust and revenue. Thomas, welcome to the Content Operator Podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Ethan.
Of course. So let's just get started then. Let's say a business owner comes to you with no audience, no content system, and a solid offer. Their previous background was in real estate, Section 8, and commercial. So what if they were to get started with you today, Thomas? What's the very first thing you analyze before any content ever gets created?
Well, the first thing that you really need to understand is what is your offer? So who are you targeting? Like, what's the customer persona? Because if you can understand that very well, then you're going to be able to create videos for that person specifically. And a lot of people miss that step. They start shooting content right away, which is not a wrong thing to do. You can either do both first, because ultimately, if by just putting in the reps, you're going to ultimately learn what that customer wants, and you're going to kind of adapt your strategy. But I would say create your offer first and then start shooting content.
That's great. When it comes to the content itself, is not asking the question, what are you optimizing for? It's the first question that should always be asked of how is that said client fulfilled? Is it vanity metrics, revenue, views, revenue, and then a mix of both? So if you were to walk through that client and see multiple companies working out there, what is one example right now in the space who kind of just did that exact process and is absolutely crushing it right now?
I can't really think of anyone specific. I do have some clients that kind of have started that whole model, and they've been doing it for so many years. Like one of my clients, Chris Rude, where he's basically doing wholesale real estate. How he started out was he had his real estate business. He started shooting content consistently on his iPhone, and it's not the best quality content in the world. Like he's just posting every single day, showing his family, showing his results, pretty much like him doing stuff in the field. And it's just naturally built up an audience over the years that's super sustainable. And really his revenue doesn't really go up and doesn't really go down. It just stays kind of flat. And for a lot of people, like it's hard to build that flat, curve of just actually making consistent revenue. But to be able to get to that point, you have to create an audience that is going to watch your content consistently. But that's going to involve just, years of work of just posting content consistently, and also having some sort of strategy.
And just to put a pin on what you said of staying consistent, getting that consistent revenue versus the ups and downs of content, a few things that I've noticed, and for audience who's listening, we had a very brief conversation before we recorded of Patrick Bet-David recently uploaded a video of him talking about the YouTube game has changed in the way they structure their algorithm. And then a lot of creators, whether it's the Mr. Beasts of the world, the Sidemen, etc., are seeing a lot of their views drop just of how the algorithm is just shifting. So what tends to make someone naturally watchable online versus someone who has that massive peak and then just collapses afterwards?
Yeah, so the reason why YouTube right now is kind of lowering the amount of views that are coming into the platform is because YouTube wants to bring on more users into their platform. Because what's happening right now with AI is people are transitioning more towards using ChatGPT or using Claude instead of actually searching for certain terms on YouTube, like how to, cook an egg or how to do whatever. There's less of those search results. So YouTube is naturally going to try and find ways to get users into YouTube. And the way that they're doing that is by pushing shorts. Shorts is like the number one thing that's popping up in most people's home pages. And the home page is what, like, that's where most of the views, most of the videos are coming from when people are, trying to get to 100,000 views or 1,000 views. The homepage is the most important section of the YouTube dashboard. And I think if people were to, focus on really creating content that's going to ultimately show results, show a lifestyle, show some sort of story, I think that's what's really going to ultimately drive the most views. But most importantly, what YouTube is really trying to optimize for right now is audience retention. So anytime you get a lot of audience retention, your views are going to go up in terms of like watch time, click-through rate, views, whatever it is. So if there is like in today's economy right now, if I were to focus on things that are going to ultimately move the needle for your YouTube channel, it's actually being able to deliver good stories that are going to deliver retention, but also being relatable. The lifestyle, like the lifestyle era of like, showing Lambos, showing watches, like that works. But now people are going to more so shift towards, showing like, let's say, a more relatable side of themselves.
When it comes to the flashy and the guru, like I used to be in the info product space myself, setter, sales manager, etc., and the list goes on. And I always loved, but also made fun of the people who are flexing their Rolexes, Lamborghinis, because if everyone started doing that, for me, marketing is the ability to stand out without breaking trust. And if the standing out part is everyone's doing the same thing, you're probably not going to stand out. So I feel that when it comes to how the algorithm is rewarding people, like I said, and what you said is like shorts, retention, etc. I also feel that the YouTube algorithm is also rewarding those emotional stories compared to the tactical, flashy lifestyles that people see. And then additionally, to add on to your point, long form content compresses trust way faster than any form of social media. So if people were to create a long form video with you, I know we briefly cover like the first few things that someone would need to know. What tends to be your thought process on how often you have a micro hook throughout the long form video? Like, can you just walk me down the process of how you would create that long form video in the first place?
Yeah. So number one thing I recommend any channel just start doing is just start posting videos. That's the first thing. Get 20 videos out, get 30 videos out, because that's going to help you understand what works well and what's going to ultimately get you the highest outlier score. When an outlier score is basically, it's a tiny score that you can get either through 1of10.com or vidIQ, and it's going to show you how many more views you're getting compared to your subscriber count. And if you see a score that's like 10x or 20x or anything above that, that means that YouTube's algorithm is favoring that video, and that's the video that you should create more of. So first step is basically create enough videos for the algorithm to know, what you're talking about, what works well. Find the outlier video that performs really well, and then find more topics like that. So like, let's say if you were going to do something about land home packages or real estate, and you wanted to create topics around it, go into the YouTube search right now, search up wholesale real estate or land home package, and do a bunch of research. Basically create a spreadsheet of videos showing title, thumbnail, outlier score, how many views it got. And then you're going to see a pattern of what works and what doesn't work. And you're going to see patterns of videos that got high outlier scores within a certain time period. So if you saw a video that performed well within the last 2 weeks and it got a lot of good views and a good outlier score, then that's a video that you should probably target, because there's a highest probability that the YouTube algorithm is going to push it. And if you do that consistently for 6 months, there's no way that your channel is going to grow to 1,000 subscribers, even 10,000 subscribers.
So to go a little bit deeper on the research process then, what would be a few questions that you would ask? I know you briefly outlined, put something in a Google Doc, see the titles, thumbnails, compare and contrast, see what works. But while you're actively doing that, what are some questions that you ask to go and make the videos even better when you're actually creating them?
When it comes to like just working with any sort of client?
Correct.
Yeah. So what I do when I'm onboarding any of my clients is I ask them a list of questions about their storyline. I ask them about their customer avatar. I ask them about some of the pain points that their customers experience. Like, What do they hate doing in life? What do they love doing in life? Understanding that whole background, because that's going to help me understand like the whole idea of their brand, the people that they're trying to target. And then once I get all that information, I can basically take that whole transcript that I've recorded in that onboarding call, put it into Claude. Claude's going to give me a bunch of data points that I can go off of. And then once I get those ideas, I can go back to the client and be like, hey, client, like these are the ideas that I have. Which one do you want to cover a little bit further? And then once we, get that whole idea, then that's when I start scripting out the whole video, because I want the creator to actually enjoy the video that they're ultimately going to be speaking about. And then from there, it's going to come off a lot more authentic. We're going to have actually a good hook, and it usually does tend to perform well within the first 3 months, especially if you're starting out with a new channel.
Gotcha. So I know you briefly mentioned data points. What's one data point that a lot of people overlook?
I'd say the biggest data point that most people overlook is subscriber count. With the amount of subscribers that you get, it really doesn't matter. The most important metric that you're going to ultimately try and optimize for is for views, watch time, and click-through rate. Those are the 3 metrics that you can really kind of hone in on and focus your whole strategy around. Those are the 3 things. There's also other metrics that YouTube doesn't measure, like session watch time, that tends to have a high performance indicator, but you can't see that. The way that you're going to get high session watch time is getting people to stay on the platform. So to optimize for a high session watch time, it's basically to drive more of your people to more of your videos. So if you get people watching the next video within your channel, then that's what's going to trigger to YouTube. Like, a lot of people are satisfied with this person's content. Let's push it more into the homepage. So if you can get those 3 things right, along with the 4th one that you can't really see the stat on, then your channel's going to grow.
So then to reverse that a little bit, to focus ever so slightly on what mistakes can kill positioning. So what mistakes in positioning silently kill momentum early, even if the content itself is good?
Yeah, so the thing that's going to really kill a lot of your performance is not being able to properly research the topic that you're going to be covering. If you kind of hack a topic, or you kind of wing it, figure out what the topic is, and you shoot it an hour later, there's a high likelihood that the video is probably not going to perform, because you didn't do enough research on that topic to be able to, shoot the video, make sure that it actually does well. And also, most of the time, what happens when you come up with a topic beforehand, you didn't structure the title first, you didn't structure the thumbnail first, which is one of the key things you have to do first thing before shooting any sort of video. You have to get those 2 things right, because the title and the thumbnail set the expectation of the intro. And the intro is by far the most important part of the long form video. I'd say it's way more important than the body, because if you can capture the person's attention within the first, let's say, minute or so, then there's a high likelihood the video is going to perform well. And the other problem that a lot of creators make is once they shoot the video, they work on the thumbnail last. Ideally, you create the video, the thumbnail first, the title first, and then you work on the thumbnail and title. Like, basically, you're supposed to do it beforehand. So getting those things done first is super important.
Yeah, it brings me back to one of my favorite frameworks when it comes to content is every great piece of content needs to die, disrupt, inject, execute. So with my previous experience, if I were to rank them, it would be Instagram, then YouTube, then LinkedIn, then TikTok, and all the other platforms I just don't touch. So I feel that when it comes to titles and thumbnails, my process is somewhat similar but slightly different. I come up with the idea first because I feel that the raw content itself is the biggest leverage thing that you can do for your time. Second is, of course, the title and thumbnail. And I feel a lot of creators get this part wrong, is they have the exact same words and phrases in the title and the thumbnail compared to having the title and the thumbnail slightly contrast, but also still summarize what the video is going to be about. So 2 things you have to acknowledge when it comes to this is that there's so many variables to content. Second is just you can easily overthink the content process. Like you said earlier, the hook is very, very important. True, but all the other things matter as well when it comes to making sure you have the highest thing. Because whenever I just go over content, it's just to what extent can we push this? How can we 10x this even more? So when it comes to hooks specifically, can you give me a few practical and tactical examples of how to structure a hook? And then what would be a hook that someone would say in a YouTube video? Like, can you give me the exact word track for that?
Yeah. So when it comes to creating a hook, the most important thing is that the hook needs to have energy. If the hook doesn't have energy and it's low monotone language, then it's not going to perform well. In terms of how to structure it, it needs to be super clear and hit certain pain points within the video. So if like, let's say you're targeting, I don't know, moms trying to get better at fitness, then you would try and target that fitness area that they're not doing well at. So like, I don't know, let's say they're overweight or something. Then you would kind of try and target that specific thing that they're struggling with within the first 30 seconds while saying it with energy, and then basically directing people to be like, this is what the video is about. And then you structure the video off that hook. Then that's when the body of the rest of the video comes through.
So I also feel that too, that with the upcoming rise of AI, a lot of people are trying to over optimize everything when it comes to their content, which eventually makes that the content itself is flat and everyone's content looks the same. So I know we briefly spoke about hooks. I know there are a lot of base of hooks, but there's also another hook. It's like the visual hook, not just what's said. It's your physical background. And when it comes to the intro video, it's who you are, your actual physical background, and then your experience and what this video is going to be about. So if you were to transition away from the hooks, the packaging, to be more of the raw content itself, can you briefly speak about the research process when it comes to the ideation process? I know we briefly touched on it, but can you go a little bit more deeper when it comes to how to ideate a video, see what works, see what doesn't?
So the first step that I do with all my clients is I do an onboarding call first to understand all those questions. So understanding their storyline, because the storyline is going to be really important when it comes to the creator telling stories, especially within a personal brand, because mainly the people I work with are personal brands. So understanding that, understanding the customer ICP, which is the ideal customer profile. And then once the onboarding call is done, what I usually do is I go into YouTube, like just YouTube, and within the search bar, I search up certain keywords. So if we're talking about real estate, I look up real estate first as a general keyword, look at maybe 5 or 10 videos that perform well, put them onto a spreadsheet, see what the highest outlier scores are. Next thing, I would look for sub niches. So anything maybe like, let's say within the business space. Within the business space, I put down 10 videos and see what performs well. Next thing I do is maybe I'll do a video that's a little bit more granular. So instead of just doing real estate, I might do, let's say, Section 8 housing or wholesale, something more granular, and then put down another 10 ideas. Once I have all those ideas, what I'll usually do is I'll pull transcripts of all of those, let's say 20 videos or so. Once I pull all those transcripts, I'm able to put it through Fireflies, which is the AI software that I use, put into Claude. And then from there, I'm able to see what kind of like the general hook structure is, what the body structure is, see what performs well. But also I then combine all of the sales calls that we've collected. So one of the things that I also do ask on the onboarding call is for sales calls. And these sales calls, what they do is they kind of go over any sort of pain point that the customer has kind of went through. So any sort of objections that they had, any sort of struggles that they had, and then start creating content around that. And if I can get the idea right, the overall basically storyline of the creator that I'm working with, and also really addressing the customer, then that's the video that's going to really perform well. And throughout the whole video, depending on if it's a top of funnel video, middle funnel, or bottom of funnel, I'll usually put some sort of call to action either in the middle sections or at the end to drive viewers over to a landing page.
So then to speak very briefly on top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, I know a lot of people take a percentage split. So if you were doing 100 videos, 70% is top of funnel, a little bit is middle funnel, and 10% is bottom of funnel. For your clients or people who you want to attract, what tends to be the split for top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, or bottom of the funnel?
That the 80%, 30%, 20%, that example that you gave, that's usually what I do. So if we're doing like 4 videos every single month as like part of the plan that we're working under, I'll usually do 2 top of funnel videos, 1 middle of funnel, and then 1 bottom of funnel. That's usually the structure I go for, because you want the discoverable people to come in first, because you're trying to grow the channel. Because more eyeballs you get on the channel, the more likelihood they're going to ultimately go into the middle and the bottom. But for those 4 videos, they're structured a lot differently. So top of funnel, you're going to do something a little bit more discoverable, something that's going to be a little bit more of an entertainment format, something that's a little bit more fun. Maybe that's like a tier list video. The middle of funnel is more so educational. So you're kind of going over top 5, but also kind of starting to go over some of the student testimonials that you're kind of explaining. Then the bottom of the funnel is where you actually bring on a student that you've helped out in the past, or have some sort of case study, and then you just go over the wins. The bottom of the funnel video doesn't get too many views, but the middle and the top of funnel usually get a little bit more.
Yeah. And the thing is, when people think of bottom of the funnel and content, they are very frustrated when they get only a couple hundred views on the video. But the kind of thing that optimizes the reason why they're doing bottom of the funnel is conversion, the monetization. And then you go back to like the data and reporting of how many views we're getting, and then how much views is worth X amount of dollars. So I love to briefly speak on the monetization part a little bit. So when it comes to the bottom of the funnel content, I feel that CTAs don't create new intent. They just funnel existing intent that's already there based off of the video. Like I said earlier, every great piece of content needs to die, but there's a second order of that. The second layer deeper is disrupt what current belief is injected, disrupted, what new one is injected, and then the execute part based off of what the viewers watched, how they influenced, what do they think is the next best step forward, and what tactical thing will they do, i.e. book a call, CTA, schedule an appointment, etc. So when it comes to the conversion side, can you walk me through how you structure a call to action?
Yeah, so most people don't like call to actions in the middle of the video. They're super abrupt. If you were to look at the audience retention curve and you did a call to action that lasts for a minute, it's going to go, basically, it's going to do a big dip. And if the algorithm sees that there's a big dip, it means that viewer satisfaction is going down. So instead of doing some sort of big promo, I usually make it really brief, probably 5 seconds, 10 seconds, but it needs to match what the video is talking about. Any big channel that you've seen, like a Wendover Productions or a Real Life Floor, what they'll usually do is they'll introduce the promo that combines with the topic that they're talking about. And that's usually how I structure my clients. It needs to combine with the video that they're speaking of. The harder call to action usually goes at the end. So the call to action doesn't have to be that long. It can be maybe 15 seconds, 20 seconds, basically telling people to book a call. And that's how I structure it. It's very simple. And there's other ways of promoting. Ideally, you're not doing just YouTube as like your front-facing video strategy. I do recommend doing some sort of Instagram. And on Instagram, you can be a lot more promoting a lot of, like, let's say your services. So ultimately, if someone watches your YouTube video, they'll go through the call to actions, they'll click on your landing page, but also ideally you have some sort of Instagram set up, which is where most of your sales are going to come from.
Yeah, that's great. And then one tactical thing to add on to your point when it comes to monetization part, I feel that when it comes to anything that comes to monetization, your CTAs, is that when you say book a call in the video, you're going to actually show on screen what that book a call link is going to look like when they click on it. Because I heard this from like Alex Becker, and it was a very small nugget of information that I found easily works. It just increases the likelihood of drop off not happening when it comes to the actual funnel itself. So when it comes to structuring those funnels for your client, because I know monetization is a really big trend upcoming in the Big 26 of content. So when it comes to structuring the offer of a client, what would be a few questions that you would ask to make sure that the content 100% aligns with the offer, and then how that's structured?
Most of the people I work with already have their offer set up, so I don't really have to worry about the offer. Ideally, anyone that I work with has it all set up, because then if I were to come in and start working on the offer, like, I would have to make sure that they're able to get clients in. I have to make sure that it converts people. So I only work with people that have, that are making over, let's say $30,000 a month and plus. But if I were to optimize their offer a little bit, I would go around the customer, because that's ultimately what the YouTube content that I'm creating for is trying to optimize for. So as long as I'm able to use the offer to be able to hit the clear person that we're trying to go for, then that's it. But in terms of the funnel structure, we keep it very simple. There's a VSL on top, there's some sort of headline, and then some testimonials on the bottom, and then there's a book a call section. And that's what we keep it to. As long as the YouTube video is able to clearly communicate what the book a call section is, the VSL should do most of the work. And the YouTube video should also do the work, because the YouTube videos are really ultimately going to educate the viewer into wanting to book that call.
Yeah, and one great resource for the people who are listening but might not be familiar with is Jeremy Haynes, who's amazing at what he does when it comes to content. Should you have the play button? Should you have the VSL automatically playing? Should I have to click on it? Should you have the book a call link? All those very nuances with structuring funnels. It's crazy. So I know we briefly spoke about everything, marketing, sales, but haven't talked about fulfillment and relationships yet. So you've worked around creators who've become massively influential. So what separates creators that become true ecosystems from creators that only become temporary famous online?
From the standpoint of working with the client and retention.
Correct.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is communication. If you can communicate with your client very clearly and they know, like, and trust you, then that's when you're going to be able to keep a client for 3 years plus. A lot of my clients I've worked with, I've been able to work with them for about 3 or 4 years consistently, because I'm just such a great communicator. Like, I'm always on top of their when it comes to getting a certain thing done. As long as you can constantly push them to succeed, but also showing little small wins, then that's what's going to ultimately keep a person. When you're showing, like, let's say you get a video for a client that has never launched a channel before in the past, and you got him 100 views or 200 views, you should show that metric to that person, because it's only going to excite him. And honestly, even if you didn't show it, like, that's, you're kind of hurting the customer, because he doesn't know exactly what's working and what's not working. But also on top of that, what's really going to keep customer retention is actually being able to show the stats, the data. And what I do is I track all my data. It's through a platform called ClickMagick. So I'll custom go into their Go High Level and their YouTube, and just basically set up custom parameters that show how many leads we book, how many calls we book, how many of those calls turn into sales. And if they can see a tangible number that says that I'm actually, converting these views into customers, then that's when they're going to stay, because that's clear data to show that the money that I invested into you, whether that's, let's say $1,000 or $10,000, is actually giving me a return. And if that return is usually 2x of how much you spent, or how much that client has spent, then they're most likely going to keep you for that reason.
Yeah. So what has been one of the best stories they can tell when it comes to interacting with your clients, whether it is Justin Waller, Fresher Fit, etc.?
Yeah, with Justin, I was a great communicator with him. I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I was able to work with him for 4 years full time, is because I texted him all the time, I called him all the time. Justin's a very busy guy, and to gain his trust is very difficult, because he's usually working on so many different things. He's doing real estate, he's doing construction, he's doing his social media brand. So his head is in 5 million different places. And what I need to do as a communicator and as a strategist is to be able to get inside of his head to know that, hey, Justin, we need to create content. Hey, Justin, there's this idea that we have. We should probably execute on it. Hey, Justin, there is a podcast that has been hitting you up on Instagram. We should probably do a collaboration. And because I was able to do that, that's why I was able to stay with him for such a long time and grow his social media to a very massive scale. Like, just getting his Instagram to 1 million followers and getting his YouTube to 500,000 subscribers, along with his clip channel to 140,000 subscribers. And then there's so many other platforms that we did. All that happened because I was able to communicate properly with him to shoot content. And when you're working with someone that has so much energy and has so much charm that is very unique to the internet, it's very easy to grow him. But the hardest thing with any creator is to get them to want to shoot sometimes. And that's something that I think I did really well with him, is pushing him to actually succeed in that.
So I know when it comes to what you said with the clips page for Justin, the one that got up to 240,000 plus, when it comes to clipping in general, I know a lot of people, it just goes back to like how you want to structure the funnel, monetization, etc. I feel that when it comes to YouTube in particular, I think the new upcoming trend is having three variations. If you want to go more top of the funnel audience, just broad, is the main page, like a highlight section, like Hormozy highlights, and then there's the shorts channel. So have you rolled out like that highlight channel to any of your clients, or are you planning to?
Yeah, the highlights channel is actually my main strategy that I've basically implemented since 2020. That's the main thing that I've always been focused on. I think shorts channels are quite honestly overrated. I think the Joe Rogan style, Hormozy style channels where it's a 10-minute clip up to, sometimes even 15 minutes, 40 minutes. Those are the content that's really going to perform well because it's in a long form style. And that's what's ultimately going to be able to build up the most trust. Because just think about it this way: when, let's say, a Hormozy highlight pops up in your homepage, it doesn't pop up as a short, it shows up as a long form video. So people are going to treat it like a long form video. And what's great about the highlights channel is that they're so easy to create. They're so much easier to create than long form videos. They're also so much easier to create than short form videos. You really just need to get the thumbnail right and also the ideation for the title. And these are like, you can plan out these things like beforehand, whatever. But I think this is a type of style of content where you can probably plan 1 week before, just kind of basically putting down a spreadsheet of different topics that you want to cover. So like, let's say there was a Hormozy clip that you want to clip up that came from a certain long form that he did, just one long form. Let's say you take one clip from that, then you do, let's say, another clip from one of his podcasts that he did with Dave Ramsey. And then you kind of come up with a whole content calendar, which is like, let's say 7 days for the whole week. And if you can execute that consistently and post, let's say 7 days a week, sometimes even 14 days a week, you're just going to have high success because it's coming in the most raw, natural style, especially with like big collaborations. So like Dave Ramsey, for example, you're going to be able to capture a lot of Dave Ramsey's audience by showing that clip, but also it's a natural conversation, has high energy, a lot of good stories, and it's going to perform well.
Yeah, it's what you just said is what I call borrowed authority when it comes to taking someone's name. Like for instance, if I say Alex Hormozy a couple times in this video, the YouTube algorithm is so good that it will push out this content to Hormozy fans. I feel one big argument though when it comes to the long form, I would say middle long form, and then the shorts, is I feel that a lot of creators post, like if they have a podcast channel, they have a 1 hour podcast each and every time, and then they put on that same channel a couple minute clip. I feel that just kills that channel when it comes to retention. Is that the same true thought process for you?
Every client that I've worked with, I've started a clip channel. There's only one channel where we did a combination of streams and also clips. That was for one of my channels, Legal Mindset, where I grew. Basically, his channel grew to 300,000, or I think it might be 400,000 subscribers right now. But with Fresh and Fit Clips, we started a separate channel. The separate channel that we started, I think, got up to 500,000 subscribers or 400,000 subscribers. It was separated from the podcast channel. Same thing with Rational Male Clips. He had his own podcast channel. It had about maybe 70 or 80,000 subscribers. We started that channel. That channel ended up surpassing the main channel in terms of views. So anytime I've started any sort of main account, it's done really well. Also, Justin Waller, as an example. Justin Waller had his main account, but then we started a clips channel, and that grew to 140,000 subscribers. So I 100% agree. You should start a separate channel. Don't combine all of them. Sometimes it does work, I will say. Like, it's not, black or white, but high recommendations to start another channel.
That's great. And another thing too is I know we briefly spoke, like the entire conversation so far has been about like outcomes that you got, not necessarily the input when it comes to structuring those titles, thumbnails. And I want to speak a few briefly on delivery when it comes to getting your clients the best results ever. So when it comes to getting those shorts channels, I know when you do scale, quality drops or it tends to drop. What are some systems that you installed working with those clients to prevent the decrease in quality?
The biggest thing that I really focused on is making sure that they've always been in touch with what's going on in the world. So looking at X, Twitter, what's going on within YouTube. A lot of times when you can do a reaction style of content, that's what's going to create the most demand. Like I would say if there's one style of content that's going to get the most views, it's reacting to some sort of news event or something within trends. And as long as you can hit on top of those subjects while staying consistent with like more so of the evergreen style, that's when you can kind of keep your channel fresh. The most important thing with any channel as you're growing is to keep the channel as fresh as possible, because people can get bored very easily within certain seasons of a channel's career. Like every time when we worked with like Fresh and Fit, as an example, we only collaborated with Miami creators at first, but we had to expand our reach into bigger audiences. So the Miami creators eventually turned into all of the US. Then all of the US basically turned into all of the world. And we were able to get a bunch of people on. But the reason why we were able to do that is because we were not only covering trending topics, evergreen topics, but also then expanding into bigger audience sizes outside of the scope that we were working with, which was Miami, Florida.
That's great. I love the point when it comes to not just having a trending guest, it's also the trending topic, and then just broadening your viewer audience when it comes to that. I also feel there's also a balance between the ever ending question when it comes to content. Do you want to go big, like a mile wide and an inch deep, or a mile deep and then an inch wide? And I'm guessing with most of your clients, it's more of that mile wide and an inch deep. And then, of course, just depends on how you structure the monetization funnel. So when it comes to monetization, a lot of creators tend to not necessarily fall off when it comes to once they start selling a product. But another thing is that once they start selling a product, it gets into reviews, testimonials, etc. Did you ever work on that side of the business when it comes to getting those guests on the podcast? If so, what was the outreach process for that?
It's very easy to get students onto your podcast if you're running any sort of info brands or any sort of coaching brand that's actually doing well for itself. One of my clients right now, like his channel is new to medical device sales. What he does is he brings on a lot of his students over into his podcast. It's a very easy process. He just texts them like, "Hey, do you want to come over to the podcast? I'm in Arizona." And they just come on very easily because we provided them really good results with the program. And they're happy to do it because one, they've probably never done a podcast before in the past. So it's probably a unique experience for them. But also they're just happy to do it because he made him, $100,000 plus a year or whatever it is. So just bringing them on, getting their story out, it's probably one of the easiest content strategies if you already have a successful program. I think the hardest thing is actually building up the successful program itself, because not many people can do that. Not many people can actually provide results that are ultimately going to change people's lives. But if you're changing lives for hundreds of students, then it's going to be really easy content play to do a case study video or a podcast video, basically outlining their success.
Yeah, I also feel that product is now the new way to stand out compared to sales and marketing, because especially in the info product space, the reason why it has a negative association with it is they're really, really good at marketing, really, really good at sales, but their product, you pay for $1,000 program, and there's a lot of creators who have eventually turned into scams, etc. Not going to name a few, but we both know of a lot of instances of whether they don't pay their sales team, cough, cough, or a lot of other things there. So I believe that product is one of the upcoming trends. What do you think are a few other trends when it comes to the online business marketing space?
I think a lot of businesses are starting to kind of go away from the info product space from what I've seen personally, and go more so for either done for you services or services that are more software based, because they know that maintaining an info product is actually very difficult and it can get really taxing. The reason why is because you have to deal with hundreds of human emotions on a consistent basis. And when you're dealing with emotions, there's going to be a lot of churn that happens. There's going to be a lot of refund requests sometimes. Obviously, depending on the products, like the product needs to be good. But even products that actually provide a good result are ultimately going to have that. So a lot of businesses that I see nowadays are transitioning from info. They keep their info offer, but then they add in like a software or a done for you service, and they start putting more attention into that because of today's creator economy.
Yeah, and for the viewers listening, for context, Thomas and I had a very brief conversation before about the monetization. And like I said, my personal goal is to become one of the best social media marketers out there. And it just goes back to thinking big. Like the reason why I used to be in info for a while, I've slightly transitioned out because even though info is a probably like $1 trillion opportunity, there's also going to be multi-trillion dollar opportunities. And I'd rather position myself for those multi-trillion compared to the trillion, even though it's still $1 trillion opportunity. I feel that when it comes to AI in particular, with info, of course, it stands for information, and AI can easily replace that. It just goes back to what you said of the done for you. And I feel that AI agents can easily do that. And I believe that AI will democratize, commoditize, and monetize info. Like all the info out there can easily be done with ChatGPT. Of course, not 100%, but you have the bare bones of how to start, how to scale, etc. The monetized part with AI, it can be easily done ever than before. And the commoditize is like, since everyone has access to the same Claude 4.6, ChatGPT, Perplexity, etc., all the things eventually are going to be commoditized, which means is that you're selling the same product that everyone else is, which goes back to the fundamentals of business. You're not standing out in the first place. So I know we briefly spoke about trends. What do you think is a trend outside of info that a lot of people are not seeing?
Within certain niches?
Business as a whole.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned this on another podcast I did. A niche that I'm seeing is gaining a lot of traction is the home service niche. So they run stuff a little bit differently. It's what you're selling is not so more so information. You're trying to sell jobs. So that's an area of YouTube that has a lot of high potential. I see a lot of contractors out there that don't really have a really good YouTube strategy that could use some help. I also see a lot of other spaces like my client, for example, medical device. He's the only channel out there. I'm sure if there was some other competitor that popped up, that someone would probably do really well. Even though his industry is really hard, I think it's gonna be really hard to replace him. And then there's other people like within the CPG space, consumer product goods space, which is basically selling, let's say, protein snack, like selling those products that are physical goods. That's an area that no one has really tapped into within the YouTube space. And I've visited a lot of these conventions. There's tons of millionaires in there. That's a multi-billion-dollar industry that no one has tapped into. There's really small pockets on the internet right now that people haven't still discovered yet that you can really kill it in. You just have to find the client that's willing to actually put in the work to actually create YouTube content. So a lot of those services are not going to be info specific. Some of them will want to do info, but they're going to try to really, their outcome is going to be ultimately to drive more clients into their business, or let's say a certain type of customer that they want. And that person is usually going to be on the higher ticket side. So anytime you're working with like any sort of CPG brand, or let's say home service brand, you're doing more so B2B sales. And B2B sales is a lot more lucrative, and also you deal with a lot less headaches because you're dealing with a client that has a little bit more expendable income. And by expendable income, that doesn't mean, $10,000. That can mean $100,000 contract deals and plus. Like, you can get a lot more business out of doing the B2B side than doing the B2C side. B2C is you're dealing with people that have less than $100,000 a year.
Yeah, and just to add an example of what you just mentioned when it comes to home service, I can only think of one when it comes to roofing, and that's Tommy Mello, if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
And then there are other few people who, what I call legacy educators. So I had a conversation with a guy named Josh Lassard. You might be familiar with him. Are you familiar with him?
I am.
Yeah, so I had a podcast with him about a week ago. Fantastic guy. And for the audience who's listening, he runs the social media channels for Robert Kiyosaki, George Gaiman, Ken McElroy. So people who are multimillionaires, and they didn't have content in the first place. They didn't have the YouTube channel. And it's always great bringing those people who are billionaires, multimillionaires, 0 to 1 on a subject they're not super familiar with. I was listening to a podcast with him, Josh, and Tom Wheelwright, one of his clients. And Tom's amazing. I've read some of his books, but he has very little clue on how social media is run. And like I was briefly speaking to someone at church earlier today, and probably in his 30s and 40s, and he had no clue what social media was. I just gave him a very quick tactical game plan of here's what you're going to do to get those people as well. So I feel that taking people who have massive authority and putting that on social channels is another upcoming trend as well. So another thing that I want to talk about briefly is the distribution side. Like you mentioned, consumer packaged goods, very distribution heavy, but it's also the content distribution as well. So when it comes to, let's say if you were to onboard Vita Coco, the coconut water company today, what would be the game plan of what you would do for them to get more sales for their products?
So first of all, Vita Coco, they're not going to want to go for front-facing face of the brand, because anytime you're working with anyone within the corporate space or the B2B space, they're going to try and take the face off of that whole industry. So it's going to be a little bit different strategy that I'm used to. It's a strategy that I don't really work with specifically, because I'm ultimately trying to find more personal brands that are trying to grow their business. So it would need to be someone within the company that has a lot of charisma, that is able to talk, but you find 2 or 3 of them. A big person that I can kind of compare this to, I don't know if you know Bigger Pockets. This is a YouTube channel within the real estate space. They don't have, let's say, just one front-facing person. They do have a host that tends to be, shown a little bit more often, but they have multiple guests within that channel. And that's ultimately how you ultimately work with, let's say, a corporate type of channel. Is you have to have multiple faces, because they're trying to sell their company. And when they're trying to sell their company, you're trying to basically take the face off of it, because if, like, let's say the channel ends up blowing up with one person and that person ends up quitting, that channel's pretty much dead. So it's a different strategy. It's a strategy I personally haven't worked with. That's something that I would definitely consider working with in the future. I'm just still learning the personal brand side of things, but every time I've worked with any sort of corporate business and corporate client, they've always talked about this whole subject.
Yeah, that's great. I was speaking to someone a couple of weeks ago, and he did some of the titles and thumbnails for Y Combinator's YouTube channel, and 100% agree with your point when it comes to the key man risk of if someone quits and they're the head content creator, what's going to happen? It's the stuff is going to go down. So I agree with you 100% when it comes to having that variance of guests, etc. Another thing too, if we're just to focus on personal brands and podcasts in particular, is a lot of companies are now trying to not start a distribution media channel from scratch. They're acquiring ones. So OpenAI acquired, I think, TBYN for $700 million. So I think that's another upcoming trend as well. So just to wrap up today's conversation, Thomas, if editing, clipping, everything that we talked about today, eventually with AI becomes commoditized, what becomes generally difficult to replicate in creators' businesses long term? Like, what will, with all of that being commoditized, what will truly stand out with the age of AI?
On the personal brand side of things, it's going to be showing results. Results is the hardest thing to replicate, because with AI, you're only searching for an answer. It's not going to show you a student testimonial or something. But with a video, you can show more of a personal side of a result. So, like, let's say you helped someone reach $100,000 a year. You're going to be able to show them in a student testimonial. They're going to be able to show them in like a storyline format. And that's something that AI will never be able to replace within the creator economy. And that's why the creator economy is always going to exist, because people still want to have more of the human touch of things. AI is going to keep growing. I think Hermosi ended up explaining this very clearly. Is like, everyone talks about AI as if it's like a business model. It's actually really not. It's kind of like the internet. Like, when the internet existed, when it first started existing, everyone kind of viewed it in the same way as AI. But now the internet is just the internet, but you don't start an internet business. In the same way, you don't start an AI business. You just use AI within your business to help whatever processes that you're making. So with content, you're trying to basically show results, stories, actually show real life stuff, and make sure that I think in 2026, actually showing something that it's a lot, it has a lot of high relatability, maybe a little bit lower edits now. I think back in 2025, 2024, you kind of go for more so the Iman Godzi look where there's like some sort of LED light in the background, cinematic. But now just showing something in, let's say, on the side of your truck, or I don't know, let's say you're walking around with a camera. That's gonna be a lot more believable now in today's economy that AI can't replace.
Yeah, I feel that the strongest creator brands feel more like movements than the media channels of kind of what you outlined of like the trends. So one last question to wrap things up, more of a personal one. What are you most excited about when it comes to your professional business videos that convert?
Most exciting thing for me, this has always been the case. I'm just excited about getting people plaques. I want to get people 100,000 subscribers because I view those plaques as basically kind of a milestone for that channel. It's hard to reach 100,000 subscribers for any YouTube channel. The probability of reaching 100,000 subscribers is like a 2 or 3% chance. Most people are not going to do it because they don't want to put in the work to actually create content that's actually going to be able to convert. So that's what I'm excited about, is getting more clients, 100,000 subscribers plus, even 1 million subscribers, the gold play button. And that's every single day. That's what I think about. But also with those YouTube plaques, I want to get them revenue. I want to just double their investment that they make into me with my, like, ultimately my YouTube service, because that means that every view that they get into the channel is turning into 2x or 3x or 10x what they're spending with me. And I just love making clients happy. That's like the thing that gives me fulfillment. And I'm just happy to see that they're getting their students success with whatever program or program or offer that they sell.
That has been the Content Operator Podcast with your guest, Thomas. Appreciate your time, man.
Thank you.